we can turn away from it.
I don't know. Just Connie. Slow it down.
Yeah, turn it up.
It's not that hot. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this regular council meeting of the District of Sechelt to order. It's 7:01 p.m. It's February 17th, 2016, and we have at the call to order always a reminder and a reference to the potential of a declaration of any conflict of interest if councillors see any material that arises on the agenda today that they should declare a conflict of interest on, please do so. And it's just a reminder to look at all of the issues as they come forward. And we have the agenda that's been circulated with one amendment on it for an insert for a resolution on 9.1. Any motion to adopt the agenda? Councillor Lutz, Councillor Inkster. Any other additions or any deletions? Anything from staff? 10.1, pardon?
I've got a second amendment.
Don't have that.
Sorry, keep that.
Okay, make sure we have the second insert on business items 10.1. So page 37, that's an insert for Spanny Development Limited Rockwood Ocean Stories. And that's attachments. So it's all the same issue, it's just additional information. That's good. Any changes to the order paper? Hearing none. All those in favor of the amended agenda, thank you. And we move to appointments and delegations. And I'd like to begin this section 3.1 with a recognition of a number of people who have been serving on our Advisory Planning Commission. Their terms have come up, and in a couple of cases they've decided to retire, and in a couple of cases they've been reappointed. So we have some new members to be joining us on the advisory planning as well. But of those, not everyone, of course, wants to be recognized for their service. They just do it voluntarily, anonymously as part of the community, so I won't mention all those names. But one retiring person is Rick Stefanik. I don't believe he's with us today. But Mr. Dieter Greener, I think, is here today, and we'd like to acknowledge your support of the Advisory Planning Commission for that past while, and we do have a letter of recognition. The Advisory Planning Commission was established in Sechelt in 1997, and we had a mayor, Nancy McClarty, who always said, why don't we have one? We should have one. And I could never figure out, she was the mayor, why they never had one. And so when I was elected in 96, we established it fairly quickly, and they provide a great service for community input and another set of eyes on development issues. And item 3.2 on appointments and delegations, Sue Jackal from the Seniors Planning Table. Welcome. Oh. Have a change of face and names. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening. My name is Ann Titcomb. I co-chair the Resource Center along with Pat Hunt, who is somewhere back there.
Yes.
We are here I'm here with Sue Jackal, an esteemed member of our Seniors Planning Table. We are here today to ask to enter into an MOU between the Sunshine Coast Resource Center Society and the SCRD, the District of Sechelt, and the Town of Gibson's governments to support the Seniors Planning Table at $60,000 a year for 3 years. A draft MOU is in your package. It states your proportionate share based on a model you are all familiar with, and Sue Jackal will speak to that in a bit. Being back in front of you for this funding won't be a surprise to you. Both Sue and I spoke at the intergovernmental meeting a few weeks ago, along with Alison Leaney, our coordinator, and were urged to present to each of the governments as soon as possible. And my profound apologies to Councillor Lutz, who has to sit through this again. What needs to be made clear is that the Seniors Planning Table is not in the business of delivering frontline services. We are in the business of shining a light on what we have in the way of services for seniors, encouraging organizations to work together, build on what we already have, and look at how we can introduce best practices and enhance community programs and services by articulating the need for them. Today, we've provided you with a copy of a list of agencies on the Seniors Planning Table, as well as those who attended the social mapping sessions held in October of 2015. Also included in that paper is a list of who sits on our action teams. Also provided is our action list based on what we've heard the community, what the community is looking for. And like all things done through the Resource Center, we use a community development model. The Seniors Planning Table members meet 5 times a year, and a steering committee also meets 5 times a year. What we didn't expect was how many organizations and individuals would step up to the work of the Seniors Planning Table and its 7 action teams. And believe me, that's an understatement. We have 21 organizations with individuals representing them sitting at the table, but also organizations with multiple programs like Vancouver Coastal Health and Sunshine Coast Community Services, who have individuals representing each of their programs. We also have 25 to 30 individuals and seniors on our planning table and action teams, all committed to collaboration and communication through and at the Seniors Planning Table, all clearly recognizing the notion that the ability to work together and support each other will better support seniors on the coast. And I'm going to list the organizations. There's a local lawyer, the BC Association of Community Resource Network, the Sechelt Indian Band, District of Sechelt Councillors, Sunshine Coast Hospice, an SCRD recreation programmer, Sunshine Coast Community Services, Better at Home, and Together Against Violence, Gibsons and District Fire Department, COSCO, which is the Council of Senior Citizens Organization, the Sunshine Coast chapter, Vancouver Coastal Health through their mental health, their home and community care, and their volunteer program, Elder College, the Sechelt Library, Women's Health Network, between 5 and 10 concerned community members on a regular basis, Coast Housing, the Pender Harbour Seniors Initiative, the Resource Center, the RCMP, the Sechelt Seniors Center, the Division of Family Practice, Christensen Village, Deer Crossing the Art Farm, and we actually have a master's student on one of our action teams doing some research work. 2 individuals living with dementia and 1 caregiver to someone with dementia. Now, let me tell you what's happening as we speak. The Abuse of Older Adults Action Team is providing the It's Not Right, Neighbors, Friends, and Families for Older Adults program to agencies on the coast who serve seniors. The program was developed nationally, and we have 2 trainers for the It's Not Right program who sit on the Seniors Planning Table. It was developed to educate and engage all Canadians on the issue of older adult abuse and neglect. We want to teach everyone to recognize warning signs and risk factors and to learn small practical steps that can add up to a big difference in someone's life and in our communities. So we are beginning with providers of services to seniors, and the program was delivered to the Better at Home on January 27th, to the Resource Center and the Seniors Planning Table on February the 11th, on February the 18th, the Sunshine Coast Community Services staff will receive it. On February 23, it will be held at a Pender Harbor Health Clinic, and on March the 10th at the Community Hall in Material Park for seniors. And the Patient Navigator is setting up dates for Vancouver Coastal Health and the Sechelt Indian Band. And training for regional district and municipal employees could be arranged at your request. The Dementia Action Team is collaborating on a public awareness presence in February and March at Sunnycrest Mall to break down barriers between residential care and the community through use of art as a means of connecting with people in the moment who have dementia. They are also working on a Sunshine Coast dementia-friendly plan. The Safety Committee is looking at ways to educate about computer safety, financial benefits and products, how to stay safe while selecting people to come and work in seniors' homes. This will include some awareness and education about frauds and scams. As you know, the Seniors Planning Table came through the Progress Plan. Care of older adults proved to be a significant issue on the coast. The Resource Center hosted an at-capacity crowd of agencies and individuals interested in seniors' issues to obtain input from them. And what we found is that we are actually late in planning for the gray tsunami that hit the coast a while ago. The population of seniors being at or almost 50% and is expected only to grow. The Community Foundation's Vital Signs confirms that. Through the Progress Plan dollars, we were able to collaborate with agencies and individuals to develop a vision, mission, values, and a tagline of compassionate hearts working together for a seniors planning table on the Sunshine Coast. Our two priorities for this year are collaboration and communication and safety for vulnerable adults. So when we received one-year funding from the Sunshine Coast Community Foundation from an anonymous donor, we were able to hit the ground running, and run we have. Besides what is happening right now, our success to date has been in hosting the Seniors Advocate here on the coast not once, but twice. The first time we had 35 individuals representing agencies serving seniors who had the ability to ask questions of the advocate. And then in the afternoon, over 200 seniors arrived, only too happy to express their concerns to the advocate in an open meeting. The duck bus brought seniors down from Pender Harbor. We had one woman that was rollered in on a roller bed, and we had to call 911 for another senior. So it was a very active meeting. The second time the advocate came was to report to our community on her housing report. Affordable, appropriate, and available. There were 150 present at that meeting. Then we collaborated with Voice on the Coast and the Housing Society on an all candidates meeting for the federal election. We were able to develop questions on seniors' concerns. In October, we brought agencies who serve seniors together for a social mapping event. It was a huge success, and the outcome of that meeting is this ginormous map of agencies serving seniors that shows who they connect with, and more importantly, who they want to connect with. The report itself speaks to a number of issues they felt that was needed in the community. And please let me know if you want a copy of that report. We'd be happy to send it to you via email. It's 50 pages. They also expressed how important it was to have more face-to-face meetings and wanted that to happen again and soon. You will also see an article for seniors once a month in both papers. It was reported to me last week by a community member that said that seniors planning group is everywhere, so the word is out. And we are asking you to commit to your portion of the MOU, which is $17,256 a year for the next 3 years, to keep this worthwhile, community-driven planning for seniors alive. And Sue's going to talk to you more about what that MOU looks like.
Thank you.
We'll take questions after.
And we'll ask Sue to be brief. Because you're regular, I didn't actually remind you of the 10-minute delegation, and I didn't want to interrupt what was a good presentation, but we're into extended time.
Yes,
Sue.
I can be quite brief. Anne's presentation covers the work of the seniors planning table. I just wanted to emphasize how important it has been to have the solidity of the structure that's there now to enable it to continue. I was asked to just remind people of the effectiveness of this MOU structure for maintaining this level of service, so that we can hire somebody to be the coordinator, the person who keeps all the meetings going, reminding people of what they've committed to do. It worked so well for the affordable housing group, and I'm just asking you to be aware of the importance of continued funding for a 3-year period. That doesn't commit you to forever. It enables the group then to find its feet and find the structure that's going to be able to continue on after the end of that 3 years. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any questions for clarification? We have heard it. Yeah. And we did hear earlier today in another context the importance of having support for projects, because if they don't have support, I think I don't hear anything or see anything from council. I think we know the situation quite well, so thank you very much. And we will, this will be referred to our budget session. We're right in the middle of our budgets, and it will be referred from here to Finance and Committee, Economic Development, Finance, Culture and Economic Development Committee, and you'll probably know as soon as we do how things work out.
Thank you very much.
I'm pleased to move to item 4.1 on the order paper, which is proclamations, and to a proclamation that in fact is for the Chamber of Commerce Week. Despite what you might read in the paper, one of our stronger relationships and longer going organizations that work to the same purposes as the District of Sechelt. Whereas a strong local business community is a key driver of our local economic prosperity, and whereas a strong local business community creates jobs and opportunities for residents of Sechelt and the Sunshine Coast and supports community growth, and whereas the Sechelt and District Chamber of Commerce is a business organization dedicated to strengthening Sechelt and the Sunshine Coast's business community and helping our community to thrive, and whereas every year members of the Sechelt and District Chamber of Commerce dedicate countless volunteer hours in service to our local businesses and community. Now, therefore, I, Bruce Milne, Mayor of Sechelt, do hereby proclaim that February 15th to 19th, 2016 shall be known as Chamber of Commerce Week in the District of Sechelt. And you may as well have the signed proclamation. And thank you for being here, Colleen. Mike in the back. Thank you. And moving on to item 5.1, minutes of the 4 p.m. regular council meeting. Motion to adopt, Councillor Seegers, Councillor Wright, all those in favor? And that was just to move into in camera. 5.2, minutes of the 7 p.m. regular council meeting of February 3rd, 2016. Motion to adopt, Councillor Lutz and Mueller. Any errors or omissions in those? Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. Recommendation 19, I did ask that I be recorded that I was opposed to that. It's at the bottom of page 16.
What page was that?
16.
Oh, yes, yes.
And myself too.
So we want two recorded in opposition to that.
Yes.
Councillor Inkster and Councillor Seegers. Any other errors or omissions? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just the bottom of page 19, last paragraph, improvements to the airport, but needed a letter of authorization, not a lender. I don't mind the lender if we don't have to pay it back, but I don't think that's how it would work. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good correction. Any other errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor of adoption? And that's carried as amended. And business arising from those minutes. Seeing no or hearing no business arising, I'll move on to item 7.1, which is a summary of recommendations for the Finance, Culture and Economic Committee. And there's a number here that we may want to pull out before we, first, a motion to receive. Councillor Inkster, Councillor Seegers, Councillor Inkster second. All those in favor, receipt. And any errors or omissions? And I'm wondering if there's an error on page 25 between recommendations number 11 and number 12. I wasn't at the meeting, but what I observed was that there was an amendment made, which I suspect is meant to be in recommendation number 11, but doesn't show. The amendment was actually to delete the amount of $267,000 and to replace it with $150,000 for vehicles. You voted on that, but in fact what you've got on number 11 here is the full, the amended one which comes next. So there's a bit of an order there which you want the amendment to show as carried, and then and I think that might have put the numbering out too, I'm not positive. Or it should read that the financial plan be amended as follows, as opposed to the financial plan as follows as amended. A couple of ways you could do that. And there was one other question I had. Oh, okay, I'll leave that for now. Now, any that you'd like to pull out before we move the recommendations? Councillor Seegers first.
11 and 12. I don't know how, one of those.
Whichever was the final one.
That's right.
Okay, so we'll pull those out. I would like to ask you to pull out recommendation number 25, which I think might be 24 as well. On page 29, the top of the page 24, that's great. I'd like to support that, but I'd like to have some discussion on, or not actually, well, I'd like you to pull the next one, the 25, which is amending the criteria.
Yeah.
Councillor Inkster?
Yeah, it's not clear what the recommendation was on the public art positioning.
Yes.
And I know that as council is aware, Councillor Shanks brought up the issue after the meeting and said that he would like to have more discussion. So in order to do that, we have to pull that particular item. Although, as I look at the recommendation number 6, it's not clear to me where I had some opposition to the positioning, but it's not clear to me how that was recorded and listed. It says in recommendation number 6 that the public art piece in Spirit Square by Gordon Heller entitled be acquired for the district Sechelt public art collection and an alternate site be determined. I believe that was myself in favor of looking at an alternate site. I don't know if that was acting Mayor Lutz. So just for clarification, because I was, and because of
we'll correct the spelling on defeated.
Yes, and correct that too. Although based on the heated part of that discussion, we may have to have added an A in there to the way Councillor Seegers and myself felt after that. But anyway, the issue with this is in attempting through the recommendation to have that particular location brought up on the agenda, and I don't know if this does this, because it talks about Spirit Square, and I wasn't actually suggesting in my discussion that it be out of Spirit Square. I just wanted it to not be in the center of Spirit Square. That's where I was concerned because of the nature of Spirit Square, the funding and such. So I would like it on the agenda in some sense. Maybe if it has to be recommendation number 6 to be pulled, it's just not clear there.
Do you want to discuss it tonight, or you just want to bring it back? Because in fact, number 7 simply acquires it.
Yes.
Number 8 shows where the funds come from. Number 5, I think given the kind of discussion it is, it might be better to refer the placement of art to committee. I certainly, it's been raised, so we know that there's some concern. I'm not sure.
Yes.
I mean, it does raise some real issues that I think should not take up council time tonight. So let's refer the issue of placement of art to an appropriate committee, which would be the FCED committee.
I'll make
Councillor
that motion
Inkster?
if that's what you want to do.
And seconded by Councillor Wright.
Okay.
All those in favor? So looking at this again, we have pulled recommendation number 11, and we have pulled 24, the one that deals with criteria. And then I'd look for a motion to move recommendations 1 through 10 and 13 through to 23, including 24, with the amount, and then the next recommendation, number 26. Thank you, Councillor Seegers and Councillor Lutz. All in favor of those recommendations? That's carried. Moving then to the first one we pulled out, which was recommendation number 1112 on the Public Works funding. Now, as that motion reads now, it's that the Finance, Culture and Economic Development Committee recommend that Council approve the 2016 proposed capital budget and the 2017-2020 financial plan as follows. Approve new funding of $150,000 for vehicles and equipment, and direct the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee to review the updated fleet management plan annually. Councillor Seegers will speak first.
Thank you. Earlier today, I passed out a list of the items that, or the vehicles and equipment that staff has recommended be purchased with the $267,000. And while I applaud Councillor Wright's motive for looking to reduce our budget expenditures, I don't believe we gave staff that envelope when we started the budgeting process this year. I would like to see something like that brought in for next year. If I look at the vehicles and the equipment that they're looking at purchasing now, what I notice is if we do not purchase these, we're actually just moving some of the expenditures from capital to operating. These equipment that replacements are taking up a lot of money for maintenance each year, and the boat and the boat in one case is a safety issue. It's been pointed out by the Coast Guard as well. The survey equipment again would just be expenditure on our operating side. So I'm in favor of the budget as it was initially presented to us, and I would like to see that as we move forward in our budgeting process this year, we look at setting up some envelopes for staff so that they can work inside of those, and we have an opportunity to contain our budget.
Thank you. So to reach your objective, we would defeat this when it comes forward, just so we're clear on how we're voting. Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to this? Councillor Inkster?
Thank you. Oh. Thank you. I'm glad that it was introduced for some further discussion. We have had a number of meetings in which these particular items were brought up and discussed. I mean, in a sense, there's some intimacy with council with a number of these items, and the actual amounts discussed and what they were what the result would be, what in a number of these amounts would replace and/or put in the hands of the use of our staff. So I was just usually once there's all that discussion and it to come at a late time, that's where I had issue, because the process had been that we had discussed it a number of times and then at late hour it had come. I'm amenable to bringing it down to $200,000 to, in a sense, sharpen the pencils. We could probably do a number of those things, maybe all of them with that amount, but the large reduction at the last minute to $150,000 was a surprise outside the process and not part of the previous discussion. So that's why I couldn't support it. And I won't be supporting this, but I would have loved to have seen an amendment that looked at $200,000. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak to this before we call the question? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I've read this document with real interest. So we're going to, if we change the $150,000, one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to purchase a vehicle, replace a vehicle that is 7 years old, bought in 2009, and has 109,000 kilometers on it. The next one is another vehicle. Now it's 10 years old. It also has 109,000 kilometers on it. The reality of this is, if we look at the overall 5-year plan for the purchase of vehicles and equipment, we're looking at spending $1.3 million. Everybody on our staff will be driving a brand new vehicle, but we won't be able to get any work done because they're driving new vehicles. I guess I propose the $150,000, and I make no bones about it. In terms of, have we had this discussion? At least 3 budget meetings this year, the administration has been asked, what's the life cycle of your vehicles? How many kilometers are on them? Have you got a replacement plan? I recall at budget time last year asking the same questions. And now here I am a year later, and nobody seems to be paying attention. If they don't want to pay attention, then they leave me no alternative but to come in and say, look, I'll help you do your job. I don't believe we should be spending $267,000 this year, nor $1.3 million over the next 5 years for vehicles and equipment. That's nonsense. Earlier today, we had some discussions about how tight budget was and what we should be doing about that. Here's $100,000. It's a gift horse. If we don't take it, that's the choice of council, I guess.
Thank you, and I recognize Councillor Mueller next. And then
Thank you, Your Worship.
Seegers.
We've heard a little bit of the small scale nitty gritty as to why Councillor Wright and I both supported this reduction in the vehicles budget. The numbers are as they stand. $390,000 was to be budgeted to be spent this year on vehicles, $360,000 for each additional year in our term. To me, that's far too much, especially when in the wake of the McElhaney report, we're trying to find in excess of $1 million a year to spend on our roads, and we can only spend $250,000 in this budget moving forward. It's simply not enough. We are looking for money in this budget, and this was one place that we decided to look, and so I'm still in favor.
Thank you for that, and I couldn't even see who clapped, but I figured it out. Try not to. Yeah, try not to. Yeah. Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. It is a lot of money to spend for vehicles. I understand that. And we also are expecting our public works and parks people to be out there in all kinds of weather to do the jobs that we want them to do and that our community wants them to do. It's our job to provide them with safe vehicles, things that will get them to do the job so that they get them done and in a manner that sees to their safety and the safety of our community. So that vehicle you're talking about, 7 years old, $109,000 or 109,000 kilometers on it. Yes, it is for a 4x4, so that we replace the 2-wheel drive truck that's in use now. They do daily checks of the 9 lift stations in the municipality. And sometimes with inclement weather, they can't get there. So that is an issue for them, and it's an issue for our community. So I understand we do want to cut back on what we spend, but I also want to make sure that our staff can do the job that we want them to do, so we don't have at the end of the year the projects that are not completed. Another one that's on here is the survey equipment. $40,000 for survey equipment. We're spending, or we did spend in 2012, $20,000 to outsource that. We have the capability inside now to do that. We need to provide them with the tools to be able to do the job.
And I think Councillor Wright.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. The $150,000, we have not told the administration what they have to purchase. They could choose anything on this list to a cap of $150,000. Now, in terms, so that's up to the administration to prioritize what they believe is the most important. If the surveying equipment is more important than the front end loader, then that's what I would advise them to buy if that's what they think. In terms of inclement weather, let's look at the past winter. So I needed a 4x4 to get around all this winter? I don't think so. I'm sure that if there was inclement weather, and I know that we do get it occasionally, there's probably a 4x4 somewhere in the district that they can borrow to use it for a couple of days. Thank you.
And I recognize Councillor Shanks.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. We can go on belaboring this point, but the reality is we have to look at all our department budgets. This is but one of those department budgets. We have to operate in a sustainable manner, and the 390, the 267 isn't going to work for myself over the next few years. So I think, as Councillor Wright does, yes, we've cut it to 150,000, but look at those things which give you payback and prioritize those items out of the 5 or 6 that have been mentioned here. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay. I would just say I like the idea of envelope budgeting, and would have liked to see it on a few others. Eventually we'll get there. From my perspective, the business cases don't all add up. I don't want to get into detailed discussion about why, but the one that really strikes me is a backhoe that, if we gave it regular maintenance and major repairs, it would then have no trade-in value. It has trade-in value if we do it before the repairs. If we fix it up, it has, I'll repeat, it will also then not have any trade-in value. So business cases have to be what they are. And I guess we'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, which is $150,000 envelope for Public Works? And all those opposed? Do you want the opposition recorded?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that. And moving on then, not to that issue.
No, just budgets.
No, we'll move on. I ask you to pull item 25, and I actually don't want to discuss it tonight. What I'd look for is a motion to defer this recommendation, refer it back to the FCED committee at a time when I can attend, because I think from what I heard of the discussion and what I viewed on YouTube, it wasn't as fully informed as it maybe needed to be. I am sorry, Councillor Inkster.
As in opposition, I'll certainly move it to defer it, yeah.
And second, Councillor. Any discussion of well, actually, we can't discuss the motion to refer, so it's either you're ready for it or not. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that's carried. And then moving away from committee minutes to bylaw. First bylaw is for adoption, item 8.1, District of Sechelt Property Maintenance Bylaw, number 522-1, 2016. And this one is with reference to noxious odors. and others, and it's been read 3 times, and it's before us today for adoption. Somebody to move adoption? Councillor Lutz, Councillor Seegers. All those in favor? And that's carried. Oh, sorry.
Just before we move on from this item, Mr. Mayor, when this originally came to us, I believe it was back in the summer, I had asked, and I believe I do recall there was a resolution to direct staff to host a town hall meeting in the East Porpoise Bay neighborhood for a variety of neighborhood issues, and including the odor, but as well dust and noise. And I don't believe that has happened. So I'm just curious, perhaps where that is, or do we need another motion on that one, or should we follow
Well, it's a good
it up in a different
follow-up.
way?
I think there was a resolution of council to support your recommendation to have a town hall meeting of some sort for East Porpoise Bay. It has not been acted on, so we'll just have to refer that back to staff to look at the minutes and follow up on that. And as you say, it was for more than just the odor issue. And I'm sorry I didn't recognize you. I thought your light was still flashing on from the notice to refer. Moving on then to new business, and the first is an insert, an AVICC resolution that we would like to take forward or would like to consider taking forward. And we don't have any background paper on this, but I'll ask Councillor Lutz to speak to it. And it's on the order paper, and it's a resolution that would ask the AVICC to urge UBCM to consider a common carrier for all local government employees in terms of work benefit and insurance. First, we should have Councillor Lutz move this resolution forward, and somebody to second it. Councillor Wright to second, thank you. And Councillor Lutz.
I have to say that since putting this forward, I have been informed by our corporate officer that UBCM does have a common carrier insurance, and they will be investigating what that looks like. It may be that it isn't to the level of the benefits we already have, but I understand there are 130 municipalities involved in that current coverage. So though this resolution probably would not be received by AVICC at this stage, I think it's important that staff look at what is available. So though I did allow this to be moved, I think we should defer it for the time being.
Okay, motion to defer with the information provided, seconded by Councillor Shanks. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you, and thank you for bringing it forward so we at least know what the idea is. Business items, item 10, which is Spanny Development Limited, Rockwood Ocean Stories, and we start with a report from the municipal planner and the Director of Development Services. First, a motion to receive. Thank you, Councillor Seegers and Councillor Inkster. Ms. Latman, would you like to speak to this?
Mayor and Council, is that we have a report before you where we have finalized the details of the housing agreement that they're presenting for Council's review and presentation at the public hearing. As well, the additional motions that were passed on December 2nd, none of those are changing. Those motions remain in place. And those are available on page 34 and 35. And if you have any questions, we're available. Thank you.
Councillor Seegers, then I have a short question.
Thank you. On page 36 at the top, it talks about a cash contribution to the Lions project, for example. What if another proposal that also fit the criteria of community supportive housing came forward before the Lions were ready to move forward. Is it going to be held for the Lions, or is it something that the municipality has some leeway on to be able to use it for another similar project?
Mayor and Council, we've written it so that there will be some available discretion about the funds. The applicant would prefer to directly give the money, the $200,000 to the Lions Housing, but staff are recommending that the district hold the money. The applicant wishes to have the money go towards affordable seniors housing. So that will be up to council as to how they use that money. Again, the Lions project, staff have had one preliminary application meeting with them. They do plan on moving forward with, but we are looking at this as a kind of backstop way. If they do not move forward, what will happen to the money? Thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. On the top of page 35, item A9, it says the replacement and relocation of an existing district sewer main that is located on the St. Hilda's Church property. There's been some flooding up there at the church property. Is this going to correct that, or is this something else?
Totally unrelated. Anything else? My brief question, and I want to get this to public hearing so it can come back, are the items in section 2, affordable housing, etc., roughly comparable to what we've seen in the other more recent development?
Mayor and Council, for comparison, I think there is a comparison document there in your that the developer, we had given them the information. Okay. The Watermark proposal gave 2 affordable housing units for purchase, and when it defaulted to the difference in price between the affordable price and the inevitable purchase price meant that the district got roughly $13,000 per unit. And that was the affordable housing contribution. And then there were community amenities tied into the Watermark project, such as the traffic light.
And was that on the insert that came in the amended agenda?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Actually wasn't my question. I was thinking more of the Claytons Seniors Project. And so the question only comes from the fact that council doesn't know as we talked last time, how those negotiations go and what the wish list is and how that works. So it's just something we want to clarify, and we'll watch as this goes forward so that it's fair in the public's mind, fair in the developer's mind, and to the best interest of the district of Sechelt.
Okay, thank you.
So someone to move recommendation 2? Councillor Seegers, Councillor Shanks. Any discussion on recommendation 2? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? That's carried. And recommendation 3 and 4, which will refer it and get it to public hearing. Councillor Shanks, Councillor Inkster, and that's for both 3 and 4. All those in favor? And that's carried. And thank you for bringing that forward. And we move to item 11, reports from councillors. I wonder how long these reports will take. Could I ask somebody to run to my desk before I get to and bring down the award? So we'll start with Councillor Mueller on my left. And unless Councillor Seegers was anxious to start, we can start on my right. Yeah, let's start on the right with Councillor Seegers.
Short. This was actually quite an easy couple of weeks with regards to meetings for me. We had a few special finance meetings, West Sechelt Community Association meeting, the Chamber Luncheon, and Councillor Lutz was there as well, Chamber Luncheon with the MP, Pamela Goldsmith-Jones, and then today I attended the Sunshine Coast Homelessness Advisory Committee meeting. So very light. Thank you.
Fairly light. Thank you, Councillor Seegers. Councillor Wright.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Again, as Councillor Seeger said, it was a light week, or since the last council meeting at any rate. I've had 2 District of Sechelt Finance Committee meetings. I've had 2 Personnel Committee meetings. At the SCRD, I've had 2 budget meetings, although one of them was all day long. And then I've had an infrastructure meeting also at the SCRD and a board meeting at the SCRD. And that's been a light week and a half.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Inkster.
Thank you. The finance meetings, there was quite a number of them, and it included the FCED that we've discussed tonight. So we're nearing the end of that process and the introduction of the budget for this coming year. I was invited to a community schools meeting a couple of evenings ago, and that's the group that works with children on their the 3 schools, which is Davis Bay, West Sechelt, Kinnickinnick, that works with the children on their extracurricular activities, sports, games, etc. Gets the kids active. It also works on their the before school program and some of their lunch programs, and they receive funding from a number of different areas, including I think the District of Sechelt gives them money. So it's really important. The big component of that is the fact that children are given some breakfast and some lunch if need be at some of the schools' hot lunch programs and such. So it's a really good organization, good program. I also wanted to, on the youth aspect, just let council know that I received a fairly heavy complaint from a couple of the people that put on the water polo for the kids that said that they're not sure if that program will continue to let youth and children do water polo because we didn't actually fund it as part of our community granting program. So just to let everyone know, we do have to make decisions, but they always have things come out the other end, like in this case, children and youth not being able to necessarily continue in that program. I wanted to mention that the Davis Bay meeting that I went to as well for the Davis Bay Community Association, regular business happened at that meeting, but there was also the important aspect. The Dave Bates, who came to our committee meeting, was also at that association meeting and talked about Chapman Creek erosion. But what Dave said and what I think he said to us was it's very difficult to in this case, fight Mother Nature. So just a heads up, what may come forward is just move the trail and hope that works. So we should put our head around that. And I don't know how expensive that will be. I think it's maybe a small piece of the operating budget for parks to look at moving the trail so that the community can continue to use the Chapman Streamside walkway but get it away from the erosion. So the trail will probably have to go in 10 or 20 more feet. But that was discussed. There was a couple of residents that wanted us to armor Chapman Creek and make it so and fix the trail. But we just were talking about budgets, and that's a lot of money. I'm thinking in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I think it's probably smarter just to move the trail and see how that happens. So, and I also missed a young electors meeting on the Sunshine Coast the other day. Other things going on in the middle of the day. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that report. And I guess the Davis Bay Trail will come back. Councillor Shanks.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. February the 4th, I attended your Ferry Advisory Committee meeting. And as a result of that, we forwarded a letter to the CAO at the Regional District and Gary Knorr and other heads of governments on the Sunshine Coast to set up a meeting with the Ferry Advisory Committee for the latter part of March, being the last week of March, to address some of the ongoing issues that your Ferry Advisory Committee has had with dealing with BC ferries, and to inform those government officials prior to their attending the AVICC in Nanaimo in April. Also attended the Downtown Business Association. They're increasingly getting concerned about their BIA, which has to be renewed sometime this summer. And I told them I would pass on their comments to our corporate officer, which I did. Attended the Chamber of Commerce meeting the other day, And a bit of a bonus in attending that, apparently the MP had offered to address some of the infrastructure needs and requirements through the Chamber of Commerce. Whereupon I said, well, they should probably read our McElhaney report, and that was subsequently forwarded to the Chamber of Commerce to forward on to our MP. If we're going to have to spend $10 million, we might as well get it on the ground floor and see if we can get some support from our MP. Tomorrow morning, I have a meeting along with Councillor Seegers with the Library Building Committee to get that off the ground. And February the 25th is the AGM of the Sechelt Downtown Business Association, and I've asked to be one of the speakers to give some perspective on the way things were 30 years ago in 1986. So I'm pleased to do that. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. And Councillor Lutz.
Thank you. As other councillors have said, it was almost a quiet 2 weeks. And amongst that was BC Family Day, which was really nice to be able to celebrate that day. I also attended the luncheon very briefly with the Chamber of Commerce and Pamela Goldsmith-Jones. I was sorry to have to run back to the RD to finish up on meetings that were happening there. But I think everything else has been mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Mueller. Pushing the wrong button.
Thank you, Worship. I was quite interested to see what the other councillors would have to say. Well, the last 2 weeks, remember back to election time, former councillor Tom Lamb had promised me that this job would take between 10 and 12 hours a week, and I think this past week was the first time that I've hit that in the year and a bit that I've been here. So just to offer a little bit more of a general update, we've been continuing to work through our budget process. I've been handling the two files which I'm on currently, which is the Personnel Committee and Regional Elect Dev, but those have also been quiet. So I'll offer a few more just kind of general comments. Since I was elected last year, as a new councillor with not nearly as much experience as some of these other people around the table, I'd spent last year between 20 to 30 hours a week, sometimes on council work. And just to get you an idea behind the math, we have about 5 to 6 hours a week of meetings, and it takes about 1.5 to 2 hours per hour of meetings to prepare for that. Since I've been elected, every time I meet somebody in Sechelt, they ask me, how's council going? That's kind of the shorthand that they do now, and I often just answer in passing and say, well, we're busy, and that's what we have been, extremely busy. And as time goes on, I'm learning more and more about my role and what that means. And as time goes on, you learn more about something like council and what your real job is. And going through budget just reminds you. We get requests about budget outlays and how to spend our resources, that we could essentially spend this budget 10 times, especially the capital portion, and not be up to date with all of the things that we need doing in the district. So in and amongst all those requests, there's a community interest, and because we swore in the oath in the community charter, that's all I'm constantly doing is try to extricate the community interest, diminish the individual interest of whatever it may be, and try to do that to my best. So that's what I did last week. That's what I did last year. That's what I'll be doing next week. Thanks.
Thank you for that report, Councillor Mueller. Do you think you'll stay? It's interesting. It is a lot of time, and I really want to recognize the work that councillors do. And if you connect with it, you end up staying longer and doing more. I wanted to just report the main event in the last 2 weeks for me was the trip to Ottawa. Unfortunately, I went to Ottawa when our Member of Parliament came to Sechelt, and I was really actually hoping to connect with her in Ottawa because I thought it would be a unique and better way to see her office rather than her coming here. But I was glad she could come and speak to the chamber. And I was in Ottawa to the Sustainable Communities Conference to primarily accept the award for the wastewater facility, which is the Water Resource Center. And I can tell you people across Canada wonder why the community just doesn't think this prize is the prize it is. I mean, people are really impressed with the technology and what we're doing. We know that. It was an interesting time. I did write a report on the conference, which I didn't get a chance to print, but I'll circulate to councillors and to senior staff. I attended one training workshop on Monday, which was on building resilient infrastructure. It was primarily about engineering. I thought it was going to be about social capital, but it wasn't. I attended 4 information workshops, one of which featured Emmanuel Machado from Gibson's on recognizing natural systems and how nature provides services, and certainly something we have to think about when we're looking at Chapman Creek rather than armoring it and turning it into something it isn't, to recognize the strength of the river and how it provides support and how we can use that for our community. I also spent the time flying out to Ottawa reading our sustainability plan from 2011, which I had glanced at before but hadn't read quite as carefully. And as Councillor Shanks said a few minutes ago, there's a lot of things in there we haven't done yet. A surprising number of were deferred to 2012, and I think we have to pick that up again. I'm not sure about value for money. It costs a lot of money to go to these conferences in Ottawa, and I was sort of going through the checklist. Would I spend $500 to listen to this speaker or $100 to listen to this speaker? And it's sort of a wash. The networking is useful, and certainly the motivation to take sustainability seriously is important. And in our case, we have a good sustainability plan, but one of the items on the plan was to have a climate action plan, and we don't have that. And that's really what the buzz at these conferences are now, making sure you have a climate adaptation action plan, because the climate is changing and we have to be prepared for that. So I wanted to bring this award down so people could see it. Within a few days, it'll go over to the Water Resource Center and, of course, be put on a place there where staff who do the work can recognize it. And I'm sure we'll have visitors. There was a lot of interest in it, a lot of interest in how it was accomplished. And on the factors, Mayor of Tofino will probably come over because they're mandated to put in a new system. We know Powell River's been over, and there was people in Alberta, Ontario, and New Brunswick that were also interested. And that would be my report. 11.2 SCRD, and provided a written report, Councillor Lutz.
Yes, my report is with the package, and I just really would like to take the opportunity to say the board and the staff at the SCRD have been amazing through round 1 budgeting. I know 4 years ago when I was the representative, I think round 1 took 5 days, and we were a day and a half. So I think that's quite amazing what they've been able to accomplish with this form of budgeting. And right now it looks like good news for the district of Sechelt, but we do have round 2. As I say in the report, we'll have to be cautious as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. And Councillor Inkster, I think, has a question about the regional district.
Yeah, I just wanted to get an update from our representative at that table as to where the recommendation from our table went on the renaming of Wormy Lake, and if in fact it's just sitting there, whether from some discussion I've had and the radio station wanted to ask me about it, was what you're hearing next steps are, considering that it's in the regional district. The chair is also the representative for that area, so probably would do a great deal to push that along and see the good sense in renaming it. So I'm wondering where that's at and where we need to go and whether we need to push.
I don't believe you need to push. I understand it's with staff doing some investigating into whether or not there is the appetite from the family. And I think it'll move along quite quickly after that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Moving on then to Item 12, items for information release. We have item 12.1, Sunshine Coast RCMP detachment. Motion to receive. Councillor Seegers, Councillor Inkster. Any questions? All in favor of receipt? Item 12.2 is the Advisory Planning Committee Commission appointments. And this is for release from in camera. Motion to receive and release Councillor Inkster and Councillor Seegers. And I'll just read the names out for the Advisory Planning Commission for January 2016 through to January 2018. Scott Davis, Graham Freeman, Sandra Friedman, Michael Faucus, Paul Mears, Ken Crozier, Denise Clark Ames, Michael Houle, Rainer Weininger, and Michaela's the recording secretary, as she is today. Thanks. And for the next 2 years, yeah. Item 12.3 is council correspondence. A motion to receive, Councillor Seegers and Councillor Inkster. And all those in favor of receipt, that's carried. And Councillor Lutz.
To remind us, we need to pass the bylaw from transit, the service amendment bylaw. And there is it is time sensitive. So if we could do that tonight, it would be appreciated.
Thank you very much. So that's, the cover letter is on Appendix A, page 11, and the bylaw itself, February 17th. Just in terms of point of order to the corporate officer or the CAO, would this not normally come at a different place in the order paper as opposed to correspondence?
It typically would, but there's no impediment to giving readings to the bylaw at this point. That's more for convenience that there's one place on the agenda where bylaws typically are.
And so they don't get lost in correspondence. Yeah. Councillor Lutz, did you move that? Would you move that? And Councillor Inkster, second. Discussion.
Yeah,
Councillor Inkster.
Thank you. Just clarification to Councillor Lutz. This is dealing with previous year's deficit. It does not indicate or lead to the provision of additional service and/or stopped and/or additional routes.
It will have no impact cost-wise on the district of Sechelt. It gives them the ability to make changes within their transit service. They're very close to their, their service levels.
Okay.
So the regional district has requisition levels, or they can draw down a certain amount of tax limit. They put that into the service function. So when they bump up against that, it has to go back to the member participants to adjust if necessary, and it has nothing to do with new routes or new transit or
new bus stop creation. Okay.
So we have first reading moved by Councillor Lutz and seconded by Councillor Inkster. All those in favor of first reading, that's carried. Second reading.
Your Worship, for clarification, what you're actually being asked to do is to provide a resolution of consent to them adopting the bylaw. So it's just one resolution we need, not actual readings of the bylaw.
That's why I would like it not to be in correspondence. I don't see anything here that tells me what that resolution would be. So we don't have to read it.
No.
Page 13.
They're asking for a resolution giving consent to their adoption of the bylaw. My apologies. That's what they're asking for.
Where is it?
Third paragraph down, he said. that it here? No, right here.
Yeah. That's in the letter. It's over here.
Yikes.
And the motion would be that the District of Sechelt consent to the adoption of this bylaw, of the bylaw number 1073.1, a bylaw to amend transit service establishing bylaw number 1073, 2007, to increase the transit service from 28 cents to 35 cents per thousand of assessment in accordance with section 359349(2) of the Local Government Act. Thank you. Seconded. All those in favor? That's carried. Councillor Seegers?
Thank you. I'd like to refer item 1.2 to the Finance Economic Development Committee.
Yes.
It's with regards to the request from the Sunshine Coast Division of Family Practice and the GP for Me funding.
Right. Motion to refer, seconded by Councillor Inkster, and all those in favor? That's at FCED. Any other correspondence we should have for action? Councillor Wright? Oh, sorry. Councillor Mueller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Previously, when this item came up, the letter from Chattelich Secondary School, I didn't raise a point of information, but there is a deadline for us to respect, and that's March 1st, to deal with that and get it back to them. So I'll raise it now as an action item. Thank you.
Well, I think we did approve the funding, so that should be fine. And there should be no problem with criteria because the criteria has never been an obstacle. I heard the discussion at FCED and it was, I wanted to just fine tune that a little bit, but it won't be a problem in terms of awarding it to students. Anything else on correspondence? Councillor Seegers?
Just the congratulations we received for receiving the Canadian Award for Financial Reporting for our fiscal year. I believe it's the first year that we received that. So I'd like to congratulate our financial staff.
Congratulations conveyed. Anything else from council? Motion to adjourn. Councillor Seegers, Councillor Inkster, all those in favor? That's carried and we're adjourned. Thank you. And now to the community and to the media. Pam?
I have three things to do. So the washout on Sechelt Street, if you look underneath that little